Less Doing episode 126. Ari talks with extreme entrepreneur Peter Sage.
Welcome to the Less Doing podcast. Less doing, more living, more living, more living, more living.
Hi, I'm Ari Meisel, and this is The Art of Less Doing. I'm going to teach you how to optimize, automate, and outsource everything in your life, including your health, in order to be more effective. I want you to stress less, free up as much time as possible, and do the things you want to do. Hey, it's Ari Meisel. Welcome to the Less Doing, More Living podcast. 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a little-known, extremely painful, and seemingly incurable disease, which forced me to go down a long road of radical transformation so that I could reduce stress and win back a normal life for me and my family. While extremely painful, Crohn's was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to innovate and create the Less Doing, More Living system, which I used to govern my life. Then I was given the gift of starting to teach this system to other people. And over time, I was able to help more and more people through a video course, this podcast, and the Less Doing, More Living book. Now I have the privilege of working with some of the world's top business minds, including Dean Jackson, Joe Polish, Dave Asprey, and Jordan Harbinger, who have all decided to join me for the first annual Less Doing Live Summit that I'm holding in New York City from May 1st through 3rd. To get more information on the Less Doing Live Summit, you can go to the URL lessdoinglive.com. Or you can also find links to the event on our main site, lessdoing.com. Now, enjoy today's podcast, and if you listen to the end of the show, I am going to give you more information on this event, as well as a way you can earn a free copy of my book, Less Doing, More Living. Welcome back to the Less Doing podcast. This is episode 126, where I interview Peter Sage, and I have the pleasure of having another special guest co-host. Today, I'm speaking with Kimmy Morton. So, hi, Kimmy.
Hi, Ari. How are you?
I am excellent, and I'm so excited to have you as the guest podcast host today because I have so much fun doing these calls with my mastermind members because we get to really geek out on this stuff in a cool way. So why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you are, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm in Hawaii, Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am, as you mentioned, a part of your mastermind group. And what an amazing, amazing group to be a part of. As you know, I started first with your Less Doing boot camp and then became a mastermind member after that. And I'm totally obsessed with productivity, and I do a little bit of productivity coaching and teaching here in Hawaii. I teach at a school called Happiness U, where it's a really cool concept. Just basically all the teachers there teach things that you didn't learn in school about how to be happy. And part of that is productivity, of course. I'm also a fitness coach. I work at a gym here called Egan's Fit Body Boot Camp, and I love teaching boot camp classes. It brings me great joy. So I do a little bit of everything here, and mostly just focusing on people, helping people live happier, healthier lives.
Well, that's exactly what we're about here at Less Doing. And don't forget to mention that you're a mother of two.
I am.
So you're a very, very busy person. And if I read correctly today, you got your third stripe in jiu-jitsu.
I did. Yes. Yeah. So the studio that I train at, we're a mixed martial arts studio. So one of the things that I do is jiu-jitsu training. And wow, it's a challenging sport, but something that is it's both physically and mentally challenging. So I really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Well, so you are a busy person, and that's why you're doing this Less Doing journey with us, and why I'm happy to have you here. So I want to tell you about today's interview, and then we'll tell you about some really cool links. So today's interview is with Peter Sage, and Peter is just a really interesting entrepreneur. He's an extreme athlete. He's done just some amazing physical endurance events, but he's coached thousands of entrepreneurs, and he's just really inspiring. So that was a really cool call. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about some links. So the first one is actually, do you do any like brain training stuff at all, like Lumosity or anything like that?
I've fooled around with it a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so I have too, and I was always kind of a fan of Lumosity, but I got very bored of it very quickly. And there's studies, there's interesting studies about using these brain trainers. So a lot of the studies say that it's helpful and that it challenges your brain in some ways. But more compelling research shows that all you tend to do if you play the brain training games is that you just get better at playing brain training games.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when I read that and I sort of looked into that, I don't know, I guess sort of inherently it like lost some of its appeal to me. However, there's a new one that I've been playing around with for a couple weeks now called Peak, P-A-K. And of course, as usual, everyone, all this stuff is going to be in the show notes. But Peak does it slightly differently, I would say. It's just as far as, first of all, the games that they offer are really like I almost can feel myself like having to think harder, when I'm playing these. And I really like it. And the reason that I feel like it's not just like another brain training game is one of the ways that I notice when I don't know, like I feel like I'm not using my brain to its potential necessarily is when I have little trouble coming up with words. Like, do you ever notice that ever, like in a conversation or perhaps on a podcast interview?
Absolutely. Yes. Especially if I'm tired.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, and I notice that I'm very like acutely aware of that where I find because for one thing, I have trained myself pretty effectively, I think, to not use at all when I'm speaking. And that's something from being interviewed and also from being on the podcast. So if I'm in a situation or a pause where I want to say I usually will just be silent and just pause and wait, which is fine. But in those moments is when I'm looking for a word sometimes, and I find that it maybe takes me a second longer to find the word, or I really just don't find the word and end up replacing it with something else in my mind. That's something that I've noticed. So a lot of the, I guess, the language and memory and even some of the problem-solving games in Peak involve not necessarily learning vocabulary, but using words and seeing the patterns and stuff. And I just noticed that it really, it seems to have an effect. Like I actually feel kind of like energized after I used it. And the games are games that I want to continue playing. So it's really good.
I think that's really key. I mean, it has to sort of be fun too, right? That was one thing that I felt with Lumosity is that it was just I thought monotonous a little.
Yeah, exactly. Like how many times can you point out which direction the bird is flying?
Oh, that bird one. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, so Peak. Okay, so if anybody knows Lumosity, the game that Kimmy and I are referring to is basically there's like a flock of birds in the sky. All of them are flying one direction except the center one. And you have to very quickly, or as quickly as possible, identify which direction the center one is flying. And it's supposed to be a focus task. And it's really, really boring. So what Peak's version of it is, which I actually think is really cool, is that you're presented with an origami shape. It's like on a flashcard. And the game starts with it, and there's like a tunnel of cards basically coming at you. And you have to say left or right. So if it's like a red crane or a blue swan or whatever, you go left or right depending. So that's different because you're sorting, which is really an interesting way to focus. And then they'll throw in a third color that also goes either to the left or the right along with one of the first ones. So it's actually pretty complicated and it really makes you think. And you're trying to go as fast as possible. That's another thing with the flock of birds one in Lumosity is that it shows it, you make a decision, wait a few seconds, it shows another one. It's not like as fast as you can.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what I like about this, I think overall, is that this is an example to me, where Peak is an example to me of a positive stress. Because it's making you kind of like anxious and nervous because you want to do it faster and better and faster and better. But that's the kind of stress that makes you grow stronger, not the kind of stress that becomes like chronic and upsets you. So,
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. It's really, really cool. So you have an iPhone, right?
Of course.
Yes. Okay. Well, so it's funny because I do too. And today is like the second time ever that I've recommended an Android app. So, because there's certain very specific things that the iPhone won't do. And one of them is really like a positive interplay between apps. You really can't have it, like you can't download an app that manages another app. Like it's just something that doesn't happen in Mac or in iPhone. So this is a app called Alibi. And it's an Android-only app, but it discreetly captures the last hour of your life, saving it locally only when you tell it to. It runs in the background and is optimized not to deplete battery, so you're never without an alibi. So it's recording audio, video, images, and location constantly. And then basically, if you want something from the last hour, you save it. So it's almost like a dashboard cam for your life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how would people use that?
Well, the examples on the website are not very positive, I don't think. But there's like a guy who looks like he's in like a riot, basically, and there's cops and like yelling at the at a cameraman and stuff. But I guess that would be one example. For me, I would think.
Good to know.
Well, for me, like I think it'd be really cool, like to have this while I'm playing with my kids, and if my kid said something really cute or funny or did something really cute, because I always have this like balance issue with using the phone with my kids as far as like taking pictures, whereas my kids are the type that if you take out your phone to take a picture, they immediately stop doing the cute thing that they were doing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I feel like this might be one way to do that. But it also, just as far as self-tracking, it's just an interesting thing to see, everything that's sort of been going on around you for the last hour.
Yeah, interesting.
So the next one is a website called, I guess it's called GitTask. It's GITTASK, so GitTask. And it's playing on what seems to be sort of a new marketplace in terms of outsourcing, where now it's not enough to have something outsourced. You have to have it outsourced really, really quickly. And that's sort of like the new differentiation, I feel like, this whole on-demand economy. So what this is if you're looking for developers for software or for apps or things like that, these are pre-vetted, sort of qualified, I guess, developers. So you basically post the task and you can get somebody working on it like right away.
Wow.
And then, turn a 3 or 4 day project maybe into a 1 day project, possibly. So, because we all know that programmers don't sleep and work at night. And it's cool. I mean, the thing is and I come across this a lot where you have somebody asking me, I want to make this app. What should I do? And usually, depending on what the level of the app is or level of the web service, whatever it is, I may just refer them to Elance and say, just go post it there and get your bid. But some people either don't feel comfortable with that, or they don't really know how to navigate the things that are the sort of nuances of Elance. So in this case, they're already pre-vetted. This is like, I need this, very straightforward, like just put somebody on it and let's get it done. It's cool.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so then the next one is called UserBrain. And this comes down to website usability. So there's a number of services out there that allow you to have people test your website and see what they think of it. And Peak is one of them, from a company called User Testing. Peak is actually really cool. And I know that you're redesigning your website, because I want to talk about your new project as well. Yeah. But so Peak is free, and you basically get a 5-minute video of a real person using your site. And they basically, so they look at it and be like, well, obviously, like, they're selling this, or this is what they do. I think that, this is a little complicated over here. And it's really interesting to get sort of some, like, a kind of a random person just talking about your website.
Yeah, that is super cool. And it's free?
Peak is free, yes. And you get a 5-minute video. UserBrain is not free, but basically what they do is it's every Monday morning you get videos of people testing your website. So it's sort of like an ongoing thing. And that's what they're saying, is that you want to make it a habit to test your website's usability. Which is interesting, because it's a very good point. I could have somebody look at my website right now, do a 5-minute video and say like, oh, this needs to change and this. And I'm like, okay, great. Make those changes and then, forget about it for 6 months.
Right.
But any good website now should be a dynamic website that's like constantly changing. To have, static websites for the most part are not good marketing material. So this is something they do it every week, basically. And you're signing up for like a subscription to have people looking at this and checking the usability on a regular basis.
That is a very cool thing.
Speaking of non-dynamic websites, and I just said, Do you remember the movie Space Jam?
I know of the movie Space Jam, but I have not seen it.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you to say how old you are, but you are old enough to have seen Space Jam, right? I'm not older than you. Okay. So, the original website for Space Jam is still online, and it's amazing. It's so like Web 0.02. There's frames, and there's like a repeating background and red text on a starry, like it's amazing. So basically, if you go to like warnerbrothers.com/Space Jam, the original website from the 90s is on there.
Cool. I'm going to have to check that out for sure.
Yeah, it's really pretty funny. And it's funny too, because when you go to like they have a link to the Warner Brothers Studio store, except that goes to the current one. So it's a really weird juxtaposition, actually.
So did I miss a classic? Do I need to go back and watch Space Jam? Is there a hole in my life that I need to fill?
If there is, that's not the one. I promise. No, it's not what I consider to be one of the best movies ever, but it is sort of a classic, I guess. So this one is really cool. I think you'll appreciate this particularly. It's called Open Food Facts, and it's basically a free food products database. And what they're trying to do is collect food information on all sorts of foods from around the world. And I'm kind of surprised actually, because I've never heard of another version of this, but it's basically a crowdsourced food database. And right now they have 31,585 products, but from the looks of it, they've got things from all over the world. And there's a bunch of like French cheeses and looks like Spanish cucumbers maybe. So it's great. And it's also, they have things with a barcode and things without a barcode, which is kind of nice. So you can show, a good example actually is Nutella is made differently in almost every country.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know if you knew that. And Coca-Cola is too. Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They actually, Coca-Cola particularly taste very, very different in different parts of the world.
Huh.
I have not had a Coca-Cola in a long time actually, now that I think about it. But I remember I had at the Coke factory in Atlanta, like Chinese Coca-Cola tends to be, I think, a little bit more bitter, whereas Mexican Coke is much sweeter than American. And the best tasting Pepsi I think I've ever had was an Ecuadorian Pepsi.
Really?
Yes.
I can't even, I can't remember the last time I had a Coke or a Pepsi.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time for me too. Interestingly enough, there are these people who are like food tasters, and a lot of them are what's known as super tasters, which is not just a fancy like adjective. They're actually people who have super sensing abilities. And there are these two women who are food consultants to the, not fast food, but I guess pretty much like processed food industry. And apparently there are, I think, like 6 factories that make Oreos, and they can tell by eating the Oreo which factory it came from.
Oh, I always think my son might be a super taster, because I've heard that, kids that are picky eaters or selective eaters it's because they're tasting so much. So when he doesn't want to eat certain foods, I just hope, he's going to be a fabulous chef someday, with this great palate, maybe a sommelier.
Well, do you find that there's certain foods that he doesn't like, that he gets picky about, or is he just picky?
Yeah, no, there's definitely certain foods he doesn't like. I mean, it's always a challenge to get him to eat his vegetables and things like that. But he can tell the difference between different varieties of pineapple. He'll say like, this one is weird, so he notices if things are not exactly the same, and he wants things to be the same.
Interesting. So he likes consistency.
Yes. So he can always tell, like if my mom buys the different can brand of pineapple, he won't eat it. So I'm like, how do you know?
People in Hawaii buy canned pineapple?
Oh my gosh, isn't that awful? I shouldn't even be saying that.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with canned.
Once in a while we do. And my mom does it for pizza, make your own pizza night. I think it's easier than actually going through the whole process of coring your pineapple.
Okay,
it's a less doing strategy.
Sure. Well, have you ever seen that pineapple core that also slices the pineapple as you drill down into it? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. I've never tried one.
It's awesome. So actually, there's a question for you. Hawaiian pizza, yay or nay?
Yes. I mean, I think it's a great thing, but I don't think it's like a traditional food here.
No, of course not. But I mean, the first time.
Pineapple on pizza, yes, it's amazing.
Pineapple and ham, right?
And ham, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually did a podcast recording earlier with Felix, and we were talking about this. There was a website that had all these recipes, the things you can do with cauliflower. And apparently you can make a pretty badass pizza crust with cauliflower.
Yeah, I've seen a Pinterest fail of that. Have you ever seen those pictures where somebody tries the recipe and then it's like a colossal fail?
Yes.
And they compare the picture. Yeah, so I think that there's a risk of the cauliflower sinking and falling through if you're not careful. So I'll have to try that.
That's a good point. Okay. Well, yeah, I'd have to try that too. However, I would say that pizza, especially like that, if you're going to make pizza at home with your family, that's one of those times when don't worry about being gluten-free. Don't worry about anything. Just enjoy the pizza and enjoy being with your family.
True.
So the last link I want to tell you about is called ODrive. And so I know you're on Apple or iPhone at least, but do you use a Mac too?
I do use a Mac. Yeah.
Okay. So odrive.com, this is a service that basically puts a folder on your computer, and that in that folder you can then access Dropbox, Gmail, Google Drive, Facebook pictures, Instagram, and even Salesforce and Box, all from this. It basically is like super Dropbox.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is really cool to me because one of the things that, if you're going to be paperless, you end up using sort of multiple cloud services. So, and then of course the problem becomes having to find what's where. And there used to be a couple really, really good services that let you search across every kind of service, but they don't seem to exist anymore. So this is actually a pretty good example. You're going to have everything kind of in one place and you can move things from place to place. It's good. If you're in the cloud, this is a great thing to do.
And it's online. It's not something you download to your Mac?
No, you do download it,
Okay.
but then it's all synced with the cloud. But basically, you have this one main folder that has all the various services in it. So it's almost like you're opening your Dropbox folder, and in there is a folder for Facebook, a folder for Instagram, a folder for Drive, and everything else.
Got it. But do you know how much memory or that it takes up on the computer? Does it slow it down at all?
It's going to be like Dropbox. I've been testing it out and haven't noticed any sort of latency. So it's sort of as much as you decide to sync, that's what it's going to take down.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So, Kimmy, thank you so much for your time.
Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kimmy will be right back with our next episode. So thank you for co-hosting this one with me.
Thank you.
And now for our feature interview.
So now I am speaking with Peter Sage, who is best known now as the Enlightened Entrepreneur. So Peter, thank you for sharing some of your time with us.
Harry, you're very more than welcome, my friend.
So, okay, you're an enlightened entrepreneur, you're an extreme entrepreneur. We're going to have to attack both of those. So give me some background.
Well, the extreme label actually came from a friend of mine who was the head of entrepreneurship, a professor at one of the world's top business schools at INSEAD, which I sit on the board with. And he introduced me to a keynote one time where saying, look, you've got family entrepreneurs, you've got serial entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs. He says, but there's a certain kind of entrepreneur that just goes that extra little bit of craziness that's called an extreme entrepreneur. And he sort of introduced me and the label kind of stuck. And I think it was definitely intended as a compliment, but I think it was more to do with the fact that I've taken on some pretty extreme challenges, both business and personal and physical over the years, and really as a way to hopefully not only push myself past certain limits or to prove what's possible or to find out what the limits are, but hopefully to inspire others along that path as well. So really, that was his label. And over the years, that had a certain energy around it. But as I move into the space where I really want to help share some of the insights and lessons, because I go at a slightly deeper level than a traditional teaching, I tend to be labeled a lot more these days as the enlightened entrepreneur. Whether that's something which I'm obviously very humbled by, but whether it's something I live up to, I have absolutely no idea. But for now, that's where we are.
Okay. So I'm going to jump around a little bit, and I feel like you're going to be okay with that. What is the Dangerous Sport Club?
The Dangerous Sports Club is a group of guys that originally were together at Oxford University in England that got their kicks from being able to create extreme sports. They were almost the founder of the extreme sports event. They're widely credited globally of inventing bungee jumping and performing the world's first bungee jump. They also
who got that honor?
I'm not sure the name. This is going back quite a few years now. I became an honorary member several years ago when their founder and president, David Kirk, and I connected, and he shared, and I shared very similar values around that whole extreme side, and so I was accepted as an honorary member of the Dangerous Sports Club. So again, whether that's more famous or infamous is yet to be seen.
Yes. Okay. So. And then okay, so you started doing marathons, and I want to get into the Sahara Ultra Marathon in a second, but what was your first running experience? I'm really curious about that, actually.
Well, I was never really a runner. I don't have a runner's frame.
I hate running, so.
Yeah, but for me, I sat there one time doing my goals one year, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to actually go and tick that box that everybody, I think, toys with at some point of the marathon? And I had no real experiential understanding of what 42 kilometers or 26.2 miles was at that point. It was kind of a distance you go in a car. And so I started training for this, the London Marathon. And I think I remember the first time I really got an appreciation for what a marathon was when I completed a half marathon in training. And I was so wiped out, dead and in pieces. And my brain says, hey, you've got to do that again. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. But the body's an incredible machine. You run a 10K or a 5 mile and you're in pieces. And the next time you do it, you're kind of okay. And so I got into the running side, and then it became quite an escape. It was a quiet time. It was for me to connect. You'll never see me run with an iPod or headphones where I'm listening to music to be motivated. If you're trying to motivate yourself rather than compel yourself, then it's always going to have a time limit. But for me, I got into running at that point. I'd done some crazy stuff, and I went for a run yesterday. It's nothing that I'm into big numbers anymore. For me, it's my escape. It's connecting with nature. It's being alive. It's getting all of the stuff out of the way that we tend to drown ourselves in day to day, and allowing stuff to channel through. Some of my best ideas come in like the second, third mile onwards when I'm present to being alive in the body. So that's really why I love running right now.
Yeah. And so, okay. And then just sort of give me a brief thing on how was the Sahara Marathon, honestly? Like, what was that like?
Well, I mentioned that I set a goal to run the London Marathon. That was back in 1999. And I remember getting to the end of the London Marathon in some ridiculously long time. I think it was about just under 5 hours. And I remember swearing that I would never, ever put myself through such a horrendous ordeal again. But as I'm sure many women who are listening to this that have more than one child have probably had that same conversation, about during or just after childbirth, only to can't wait to do it again. So the body has a very short-term memory when it comes to pain. I found. And so lo and behold, a year later, I'm setting my physical goals, and I thought, well, how can I raise the bar? So I thought, I know what I'll do is I'll run the London Marathon again, but this time I'll do it in a 40-pound, 20-kilo, 7-foot-tall rubber or latex rhinoceros costume for charity. Yeah, as you would.
Yeah, of course.
So I did. I ran my second marathon in this like incredible suit that you sweat standing still. And I struggled. I mean, there was 8 people running for Save the Rhino. We were a full herd. And the craziest part about it wasn't actually running the marathon in the rhino suit. The craziest part for me was, I do a lot of work with Tony Robbins for many, many years around the world. And I was working with Tony down in Australia. And when I looked at the dates, I thought, I can't do the London Marathon because I'd be in Australia. And I figured out that if I got the first plane out after the event, I would be able to land at Heathrow after a 22-hour flight and get a taxi to the start line. And so I did. And so, 14 miles later, everything was great. And then all of a sudden, as you can imagine, after a 22-hour flight, how dehydrated you are, I just seized up.
Oh, wow.
And it was horrendous. And I remember getting to the end of that marathon and saying, something, I will never put myself through anything like that ever again, only to have something about 2 years later capture my imagination. Yeah, and we get this all the time, whether it's a business idea, whether it's a partner or a potential partner in a relationship or something that just it hooks you. There's that inspiration. It's like, wow. I mean, the difference between looking at a good technically painted wall hanging or a masterpiece from Leonardo da Vinci. There's something different and that speaks to you at a different level. And I heard somebody talk about this race called the Marathon des Sables, the Marathon of the Sands, the Sahara Ultra Marathon. And I remember listening and being captivated. It was like, wow. I mean, who in their right mind would do something like that? You're running not just a marathon, you're running a marathon a day, back to back for 7 days across the toughest terrain in the world in 135 Fahrenheit, carrying 20 kilos on your back, self-sufficient in some of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet. Water's rationed to 9 liters a day. That's for washing, cooking, hydrating. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's a strategy game. Do you run with a light sleeping bag? So it's it's easier to run in the day and you don't spend as much energy with the weight on your back, but you lose energy at night when it's nearly freezing in the desert? Or do you run with a heavier sleeping bag so it's harder to run in the day, but you stay warmer at night? Everything's a call. Do you use water to wash your hands after the bathroom and not get diarrhea? Or do you save precious water for hydrating? Everything's a call. And I was so captivated. When I started out thinking, who in their right mind would do that? Right through to when I finished hearing about this, having the thought of, wow, this is something I have to do. And that was kind of the mental journey over about 30 minutes that I took to do it. So I did. I signed up, and that was an incredible experience. I learned so much on that, and I'd be happy to share a couple of the lessons if you're interested.
Yes, of course, please. I'm always interested. Personally, I had this experience, sort of how you relate extreme, not just extreme sports, but extreme lengths of the human body and mind to how you are in business.
Absolutely. I mean, how you play at anything is how you play at everything. So, the challenge is, I've done and taught firewalking for over a decade, with Tony and elsewhere. And the hardest part of a firewalk is showing up. Once you make the first step, trust me, you're not turning around. Right? You're gone. You're off. You don't change your mind halfway through a firewalk. So the challenge was that there was more people that had signed up for the Sahara Ultramarathon that didn't show up to the start line than actually dropped out of the race. Right. And that's that was a big insight for me. But I also remember that the day of the double marathon, day 4 is a double marathon, 52-mile stage, 84 kilometers nonstop. And I remember I woke up the morning of the double marathon with food poisoning. I tried to save water by not hydrating my food when I was cooking it the night before, and it was a mistake, and I was in bad shape. I couldn't even lift my rucksack. I was so weak. And I remember I stood at the start line and the gun went off, and I've got 82 kilometers. I've already ran, best part of 3 marathons in the last 3 days. I mean, you're already in pieces. And I've got 82 kilometers to run, 52 miles that day across open desert tracks, wadis, sand dunes, and all sorts in blistering heat. And I'm like, whoa, I couldn't even run. I just trudged off, and you've got to be or keep a certain pace. Otherwise, if you're behind the cutoff times, you're disqualified. So I couldn't just walk. And I remember I couldn't run for the first 4 hours, and I tried to pick up the pace. And by the end of that evening, it was about, it was dusk, 7 o'clock in the evening. I'd been running since 8 o'clock that morning, or walking or trying. And the sun was starting to set. I'd covered 30 miles. I got another 20 miles to run through the night. And it was starting to get cold, which meant I had to run just to stay warm. And I remember thinking, that's it. I quit. I can't do this. And I sat down on a rock. I started to cry, and I was like, I'm done. There's a voice in my head saying, fire the flare. They give you this 2-pound rocket flare, which everybody hates because it weighs so much. But if you fall over, break your ankle out in the desert, or get bit by a camel spider or a rattlesnake or something, you can fire this flare off, and the helicopter will come in and take you out. And I remember every morning I'd unpack my rucksack, and I'd repack the rocket flare right at the bottom, because I thought it's always easier in my mind to take one more step than it would be to stop and unpack and fire the flare. That was my kind of motivational strategy, if you like. But I remember in my mind, this flare was getting higher and higher in my rucksack. And I just sat down and thought, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to fire the flare, and I quit. Those times where you got 2 dogs on your shoulder, one saying, go on, you can do it. I believe in you. Go on, one more step. Let's do it. And the inspired voice. And then the other shoulder is saying, something, nothing else to prove. Fire the damn flare. You get a nice cold beer and a hotel bed. What are you waiting for? Yeah. And, which one wins? Obviously, we all know it's the one you feed the most. But unfortunately, the good dog, the inspiring dog, I think had been put down. It had died of starvation. It's got rabies. It was gone. And that was it. I was done. I quit. And it's in moments like that sometimes, Ari, that, we get the biggest lessons in life, because I was just about to throw in the towel. And I remember hearing this noise, this like trudging through the sand. And I looked up, and there was a blind elderly Korean gentleman, a competitor. That was tied at the wrist to his guide, just trudging past into the sunset. And I remember sitting down watching this for like 5 minutes, these 2 shadows silhouetted into the distance, and thinking, whoa, hang on a minute. What possesses somebody who's clearly not an athlete, he's a pensioner, want to participate in what was arguably the toughest foot race in the world when he can't even see where to place his feet? One of the upsides was the incredible scenery. It was like, a postcard out of Arabian Nights sometimes. But he couldn't even get that. He couldn't even see where to place his feet in some of the rocks and the salt waddies that was very dangerous, so he could break your ankle in a heartbeat. What made somebody do that? I mean, I'm a young, fit guy. And I sat there and I thought, well, if I've got to find out, then I better catch him. So I got up and I ran after him. And after a few minutes, I caught up and I asked him the question, what makes you do this? I'm a student of human behavior. And I got a message through his guide, who was also his translator, that affected me profoundly. He said that this gentleman had basically ran this race every single year because several years ago, his brother had died of cancer. And every year he ran the race to raise money for the hospice that had looked after his brother in his final days.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, you know something? I looked at what my reasons for running the race were. And it started with a capital ego. Here's me wanting to prove to myself that I can run the toughest foot race in the world. Why? To show other people that I'm good enough? To impress girls in a bar when I'm having a bicep measuring competition with the other alpha males? Give me a break. That level of motivation got me as far as sitting on a rock crying, because I got sand in my blisters, my shoulders were in spasm, and I couldn't take one more step. That was motivation for you. But inspiration comes from a deeper place. Inspiration compels you to run, doesn't force you to run. If you can compel yourself to go to the gym in the morning rather than force yourself when the alarm goes off at 5:30, you're going to make it. And for me, it really inspired me. I'm like, whoa, I've been doing this whole thing for the wrong reasons. And he inspired me to complete the day. I finished the race. I ran another 26.2 miles the day after. And on the final day, I crossed the finish line in a fit of emotional overwhelm and recognition that I wasn't running for myself anymore. Maybe I didn't realize that maybe 10 years later on a podcast, I might be able to tell the story that may even inspire other people to say, well, hang on, if he can go and do that, I can go and run a 5K. It's no longer as much of a stretch when I hear a story like that. I don't know. I'm unattached from the outcome. It's not about me, and I don't want the story to be about me. It was about my level of inspiration. If I can help pass that on, then great. Use it. But it taught me a huge lesson about getting out of your own way for the sake of covering up your insecurities to prove you're good enough. We were born good enough. We don't have to set up a business to prove it. So therefore, we recognize that fact, and we're free to set up a business we're passionate about rather than one we think will give us the most chance of success, rather than risk failure and not feel good enough. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense. I think that's a very elegant way of stating it, actually. So,
thank you.
And it's a wonderful story, of course. It's always interesting to me when you look at perspective, In my case with the Crohn's was the hardest thing that I've ever experienced at that point. But then I was like, well, I need to experience something harder, actually, to give this some perspective. And that was, in my case, was Ironman France, which was definitely the hardest thing I've done. And it made the Crohn's pain at least seem kind of manageable. So, and there's every level of that, because the hardest thing in my life is nothing to compare to something that is every day in somebody else's life in a really, really bad situation. And you can see that in the world. So I always find that to be really inspirational and motivational. Now, I don't mean to focus this entire interview on sports, but I also saw in your bio about being a marksman. And that's something I wanted to ask you about as well, because to me, whether it's with a gun or a bow and arrow or a spear, it doesn't matter. There's something about being a marksman, I think, that is a really interesting skill in terms of how you control your physiology and direct it into something that could be the size of a pin. So how did that come about? And again, how do you apply those principles, or do you?
Absolutely. And that really stems back to, my grandfather owned a gun club. And so I grew up with guns. I grew up to respect, guns. And obviously, you go through phases going out, shooting for food and stuff. And I grew out of that into a far more sort of focused on target shooting. I didn't like the whole sort of aspect of taking life through that, but I did enjoy shooting. I found out, obviously I'd been trained from a young age. And so then I joined the Army Cadets when I was younger and was in the shot for the county when I was 13. I shot for England when I was 15. And then I shot for Great Britain when I was 17 in the combined services teams against, Marines or Air Force or what have you. And then, I went on to do a lot of civilian shooting. And the aspect of that, you're absolutely spot on, Eric. It's all about, I could sum it up in one word, and that's poise. If you can have a level of physical self-control that is overlaid with mental self-control, then you have the foundation to be able to apply yourself at anything, whether it's learning French, whether it's firing a weapon, whether it's listening to your spouse. Those two are required to be integrated in a way that obviously I was very fortunate having that as a hobby compelled me to be able to do. Yeah. And so, you see people who can master their physical body. You can sit cross-legged for an hour meditating or trying to, but your mind's on fire. You can have people that can try and focus on something on a task, but they're fidgeting. Being able to have that level of physical and mental poise that can integrate into a level of concentration and self-control means that you can master just about anything that you put your dedication towards at that point. And I think that's been one of the keys that's helped me as an entrepreneur be able to become successful at certain levels and deal with a lot of the failures that I've had as well in terms of self-reflection, because that level of poise means that you're not reactive, you're not emotionally, let's call it trigger happy, shall we say. And so, I think that, no one's ever asked me about the marksman question before on a podcast, but looking at it from that perspective, I think it was a huge part of the initial self-discipline that got me to where I am.
Well, so one of the reasons that stuck out at me is that when I was younger, I also actually achieved marksman status with riflery, and it was something.
Well done.
Thank you. And when I was younger, particularly, I believed that I really wanted to join the Army, and I wanted to be a military sniper. Now, that doesn't mean that I necessarily believed that I could take somebody's life. It was just something so fascinating to me about what goes into that level of technicality. Yes, and the mindset, exactly. And especially for a sniper, who might be sitting still waiting for 2 days before they get 5 seconds to make or break. So it's something that's just always been interesting to me, and it's something that I feel like that kind of the proverbial laser focus that people refer to, like that. That's what it really is in a lot of cases. If you can quiet your mind, quiet the outside world, and just breathe into your pulse, there's a lot that you can do other than just pulling a trigger necessarily. So
absolutely.
So what are you excited about, this year? We're just at the beginning of 2015, and what are you got some really amazing companies that you've worked with. You're doing speaking. You're motivating tons of people. Like what's really got you excited for this new year?
That has to be it. To be fair, I'm actually very excited to really now be at a position in my life where I can dedicate my entire focus on helping people and sharing my message. That's where I'm going over the next 2 to 3 years as a horizon in a heartbeat. I've spent 25 years in personal development. Most of the big names are good friends. We've co-created a lot of stuff. I've got an amalgamation of so many different things that I know I can add value to people with, but I've never been in a position where I focused on being able to package that in a way that people are able to avail of it in a way that adds value. Or is easy. Trying to get hold of 5 minutes of my time over the last 10 years is almost impossible. Being able to sit down and create something that people can go to my YouTube channel and benefit from has just not been available because of my corporate level of traditional business focus. I'm in 20 countries a year. I live on an airplane. It's been very difficult. So I'm a great believer that we have a thinking center and we have a feeling center, and most people's lives are ran by their thinking center. The mind is a great tool. It's a great servant and a lousy master. And it thinks in language, labels, metaphors, associations, logic, deduction, reasoning. Whereas the feeling center has a much quieter voice that cannot be heard over the top of most people's mind. So if you can move your mind out of the way and start listening to that inner sense from your feeling center, which communicates only in two ways: feels good, doesn't feel good. Call it gut feel, call it sixth sense. Doesn't matter what the label is. We all know it's there. And over the last 12 months, that voice has been telling me emphatically that my mission right now is to position myself in a way that hopefully I can help as many people as possible by some of the insights that I've been fortunate enough to get, and hopefully be able to share in a way that people can understand and apply. So, I'm juiced about 2015. I've put an entire new team around me right now that's committed to sharing in the vision and of being able to help people. I've got people that are raving fans of my work that are bought in that want to help contribute at some level. And I've never been in such a state of flow that I can remember for many years. So, and having opportunities like this, Harry, to be able to, work with people yourself that have gone out and created a platform that are also helping people that I can channel through is phenomenal. And, I want to thank you for that up front. But that's my focus right now. And if you notice, it's the beginning of the year. You've got two ways to engage predominantly. One is the same old. And the predominant difference for that level of energy is you're going to have one extra candle this year, and great. But I'm a very keen observer of people's lives that work and people's lives that don't. I have been for a quarter of a century. And if I can distill probably the defining factor that makes the difference, it would be separating people into two groups. And again, in today's world of slicing and dicing a billion different labels, you can do it any way you like. But essentially, I don't care. I see people falling into two categories. I don't care if they're in corporations, if they're in sports teams, if they're in school. I don't care. There are those people who are inspired and there are those who aren't. End of story. And those who are inspired, you'll notice there is a different spark. There's a different energy that they're up to something. They're on purpose with something. They're not reactive. They're proactive in a way that is almost a level of perpetual motion coming from an energetic force inside them that compels them to drive forward with a positive level of vibration. And then those who aren't inspired are dealing with and moving forward in day to day and are usually reactive and dealing with stuff as it happens and what have you. It's not better or worse. It's just a differentiation. But for the first time in a long time, I'm actually really, really on purpose with what I'm doing. And I can't wait for the year to unfold.
Well, that's awesome. So the last question that I always love to ask on the interviews here with Peter is, and this, you can interpret this however you like, and you can draw from any sort of knowledge.
No problem.
What are your top 3 personal tips for people to be more effective?
The first thing would come back to kind of what we spoke about with regards the marksmanship. Take control of your mind. Learn how to concentrate, first and foremost. You see, a lot of people are going out trying to learn new strategies on how to be more effective at doing the same things. Concentration precedes all of that. If you have the ability to concentrate, sharpen your mind, not your skill set. It's not about getting a more efficient time management system so that you can delegate out this or whatever. That has its place. But if you've still got the same level of mind chatter that is inefficiently leading you down different ways, that's like saying, well, I want to look better. I'm 20 kilos overweight. So in order to look better, I'll go buy some better looking clothes. No, get your ass in the gym and find out what level of nutrition and lifestyle supports you to become a vibrant level of health example. Right? You're not going to cover it up just by wearing a better tuxedo. And that's where I see a lot of people. So first and foremost, don't run off and try and learn better time management. Try and learn better self-management. Take a concentration course. Read books on improving concentration. Work on that first, and then everything you add onto that will have an amplified level of benefit. So that would be tool number 1. Second tip, whatever you can automate in your life, automate. There's so much technology available right now. We don't have an excuse for spending too much inefficiency on stuff that people have invested millions of dollars in software development to be able to handle for us so that we can press a button and not think about it again. I mean, that's just an inability to take the time out to focus on what is out there for you. I mean, just think about it. 10 years ago, there wasn't an app store. We're living in a time in history where you have never had such a plethora, such a smorgasbord of opportunity to engage with technology that can simplify your life. So automate. And then third tip would be to surround yourself with an environment that supports what it is that you want. Set yourself up to win. Now, if you get all excited about running off on a new time management course or learning concentration, but you're sat in an office of people that are negatively complaining and talking about crap, then that's not supportive. You're going to be sucked into the law of conformity into your environment, whether you like it or not. We're cybernetic organisms. We're programmable by design. We are going to adapt to our environment. We don't get to vote on that. What we do get to vote on is to choose what environment we adapt to. Now, if you go to McDonald's 3 times a week or you go to the gym 3 times a week, your body's going to adapt whether you like it or not. How you spend your time and who you spend your time with is huge. So you want to upgrade your efficiency, upgrade yourself to an efficient peer group and see what happens. Or set yourself up in a better environment. Take all the crap out of your fridge and throw it away and put stuff in there that's going to be supportive of you physically, if that's the environment you want to be more effective in. Put your gym kit at the bottom of the bed before you go to sleep, rather than have it in your wardrobe that's the other side of the room. Then it's cold and you're tired and you don't go and do it. Get yourself an accountability partner. Hire yourself a damn good coach, a mentor. Money invested at that will make you so much more efficient and accountable. That one thing alone will transform your year more than anything else. That would be my top tips.
Well, I love it. I love it. So, Peter, thank you. That has been absolutely wonderful. It's really been great talking to you. And where can people find out more about you and everything that you've got going on?
Certainly. petersage.com is my website. You can get a lot of resources from there. We're going to be relaunching that soon with a whole new online experience for people to be able to deepen their levels of enlightenment around everything from relationships to business to self-management. petersage.com. I'm all over social media. Obviously, YouTube, Twitter, all the usual, Facebook fan page. Please connect with me. I'm putting a lot of stuff out. I do some personal mentoring at a unique level if people are interested. Then please feel free to send me an email. It's happytohelp@petersage.com. If you've got any queries or questions, I can't promise that I answer immediately, but I do try and answer everybody's question that I can to see if I can help.
Well, great. Thank you again, Peter.
Harry, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're an absolute star.
Hey, it's Ari again. Thanks for listening to today's show. As I promised at the beginning of the show, I am going to tell you more about the Less Doing Live event in New York City from May 1st through 3rd. Then I will tell you how you can earn a free copy of the Less Doing, More Living book. Less Doing Live is an event I am putting on with Business Research Group in New York City. We've designed this event to give you and a small group of Less Doing fanatics a personal, quality experience. We are limiting this event to 150 participants in Manhattan to make sure that I get a chance to meet and hang out with every one of you. Now, here's why this event is different. You see, most business conferences are just a series of speeches on a stage where smart speakers get up and give you tons of great information. In fact, it's usually so much that you don't know what to do with it all. But at Less Doing, our community is all about taking action. So I have designed this event to make you take action. But at Less Doing, our community is all about taking action. So I've designed this event to make sure you do take action, because the only way to make big changes in your life is to invest in yourself. And that's not only an investment of your money, because you can always earn more of that, but rather an investment of your time, which is something so precious because you can never get it back. So at this event, we're not just going to talk. On the first morning, Dave Asprey and I are going to share with you the latest cutting-edge tips on how to hack your productivity and biohack your body. But then that afternoon, it's going to get really exciting when we break down into small groups and get you into workshops to solve your biggest problems in productivity. What are the workshops going to be? They'll be designed to help you tackle the fundamental problems that stop 99% of the world from realizing their full potential. Getting your email down to inbox zero and mastering your communications with the world? Or a scheduling class where you can learn how to automate your schedule to the point where you will have a calendar working for you. Or an outsourcing class where you can learn how to get rid of 95% of the things that you shouldn't be doing on a daily basis. We're also going to have a biohacking class that's going to include nutrition and help you master your body and your life. Which one of these classes should you attend? Well, that's where my Less Doing certified coaches come in. Before we even let you get to the event, you have to speak to one of our coaches so that we can talk to you and see if the event is right for you. That way we can make sure that we truly help you. So to get to the event, you just need to enter your email and then register to speak to one of our Less Doing certified coaches in a free 45-minute coaching call where you will learn the one area of your life that you need the most help with and will get the most impact out of. Now, as a special gift to you for joining this free coaching call, I want to recognize your commitment to your productivity by giving you a free copy of the book, Less Doing, More Living. Thanks for listening.